gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. So welcome, friends, to this Wednesday night Sutta class. And this evening, we're going to try to finally finish the 7 purifications that we started probably almost 2 months ago, starting with the Ratha Vinita Sutta, and then spending a couple of weeks on the insight knowledges. And last week or two, I couldn't do this class because of our retreat and some other technical difficulties. So I had you listen to a previous talk on the 10 fetters and the 4 stages. So actually I'm going to be, this is what we're going to be focusing on this in this tonight. So we left off with the 8 insight knowledges, if you remember, that ended in the equanimity, the knowledge of equanimity of formations. And then we also, the following week, we covered the section on conformity knowledge and change of lineage. This is the critical sort of transition, or the transition from the ordinary conditioned mind dominated by ignorance to the first glimpse of the unconditioned and leading up to entering the stream. So this is where I want to continue on tonight. And this entails explaining the 10 fetters and the 4 stages of enlightenment, but I prefer to call them the stages of liberation, because actually that's what it is. It's the liberation of the mind from greed, hatred, and delusion, and the liberation of the mind from being shackled by the 10 fetters. Now, most of you probably know about the fetters because we've talked about them before. But the 10 fetters, a fetter is like a chain link. And or we get bound up. Somebody ties us up in chains, and we're fettered. We can't really move freely because of these chains. So in the same way, these 10 fetters are which sort of chain or bind the mind to samsara, into the wheel of birth and death. So the first stage of liberation, by going through the 8 insight knowledges and developing the conformity and change of lineage, the next step is actually attaining the paths and the fruits, what is called path knowledge, and then the fruition knowledge. And one becomes a Sothapat, or enters the stream. Now, you all heard this many times over again, about entering the stream, a stream enterer, and so on. And so that stream actually refers to the stream of knowledge and the stream of awareness that has begun to flow toward eventually the state of liberation. Now, The attainment of the first stage of stream entry is marked by overcoming or destroying the first 3 fetters. So these 10 fetters are connected to these 4 stages of liberation. And certain fetters are eliminated or weakened and eliminated at these successive stages. So the first 3 fetters are what are called the personality belief, and then attachment to rites and rituals, and doubts. And I'm going to briefly explain these, although I've explained them before in previous talks, and you might have heard them. But the personality belief is, the belief that there's a permanent indwelling kind of self or soul, an unchanging self or soul that, is in our mind, or that is our, people say that's my soul or that's my self. And they think they have the idea that some unchanging entity, and that this self that somehow you acquired at birth is going to carry on to a next life, or would be annihilated at the time of death. Those are the 2 views of self. Either it's eternal, and when you die, the idea of the mind existing eternally in either a heaven or heaven world, or just going through a samsara. So, or the annihilation view that when you die, the mind just kind of goes poof and disappears, and nothing is left over. Even if a person has spent the whole life doing all kinds of negative actions, killing, stealing, lying, raping, pillaging, and plunder, the idea that, it doesn't matter when it dies, poof, the mind's going to disappear. There's not going to be anything left over or anything. So that's the view of usually considered the view of the annihilationists, or the materialistic view. Anyway, whatever views, there's so many different views of the self. But in that first glimpse of Nibbana, that attainment of the Sotapanna, what is called the path knowledge. Path knowledge is that first glimpse of the emptiness of the ego. Basically, it's a glimpse of the 4 noble truths, but at the very heart of that vision is the complete dissolution of the sense of the I or self. That means, most people have this feeling that here this is I, me, or mine. So I, me, or mine is the trinity of the self from the Buddha's point of view. That means everything that we do or hear or experience is related to somehow, this is I, this is me, these things are happening to me, look at me, and I'm going here, I'm going there, I'm doing this and that. I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling happy, or mine, this is mine, this is mine. So those 3 motivations are behind virtually every intention and every action that we do with the conditioned mind, the ordinary, average, unliberated person that's dominated by greed, hatred, and delusion. So anyway, at least that glimpse of Nibbana shows the person directly that, that sense of self is basically an illusion. And it isn't anything permanent, because you've temporarily glimpsed its dissolution. Although because of the strength of habit, that experience doesn't last. But it's so powerful that it destroys these first 3 fetters. And one is the belief in a self. Now, it doesn't destroy the self. This is sometimes a misperception. It doesn't destroy or overcome the sense of I, me, and mine in the consciousness. But the person now is totally convinced that it's an illusion. You know, before that, he might have had doubts, or she might have had doubts. Well, this self, I mean, you know, yeah, it appears to be real and, you know, whatever. So they had doubts, but that first glimpse of entering the stream removes those doubts because of that clear, very powerful, momentary experience in which you experience transcendent, non-dual awareness without any sense of I or me or mine or self and so on. So that's a very powerful, and it goes right to the very deepest depths of the unconscious mind and weakens the sense of self. But it doesn't destroy it. It only destroys the belief in a self. That's why it's called personality belief, or the Pali word is called Sakkaya Ditthi. So the Ditthi means the view of self. Now, the second of the fetters is in Pali called the Sila Bhatta Paramasa, which means the attachment to rites and rituals. And basically, this is meaning you believing in some kind of external rites or rituals that you can do that will sort of purify your mind of the defilements just by doing some external rites and rituals. Now, at the time of the Buddhists, see the Brahmins and so on in India, at that time, you know, they were steeped in these rites and rituals. Now, one of the common ones is that if you go to the river Ganges and take a bath and pour water, immerse yourself in the Ganges River or any holy river, that would wash so many of your sins away. So that's a belief, and whether it does or not is highly doubtable, but anyway, that's a belief. Now, if you think that, or circumambulating some holy mountain, thinking that just doing those things and not meditating is enough to liberate the mind. So that's something the Buddha said is a hindrance, is a fetter, because people get attached to those and they start performing these rites and rituals, like, you know, various observances people have, you know, praying to trees and spirits and all kind of other things to, you know, help you liberate from, the suffering. So anyway, these will be considered. Because in that experience, you saw that, you know, that experience just doesn't come quickly to most people. And, you know, they've practiced for a long period of time, probably. And know that it comes through the hard work of cultivating, practicing sila, samadhi, and panya. And so they realize that, no, liberation comes from the mental purification, not so much the physical acts, these material kind of oriented rites and rituals. So anyway, that's the second fetter, is overcoming the, you know, attachment to these rituals, thinking that that is the way to liberation, rather than using the meditation and developing the four foundations of mindfulness and insight knowledges, as we have already discussed. So now the third of these fetters is doubts. And that's basically usually it means doubts about whether the Buddha was enlightened or not, or whether the Dhamma is really a true teaching, or doubts about yourself also, doubts about, do I have what it takes? I don't think I'll be able to attain enlightenment in this life, or, these kind of doubts that kind of sap your energy, that don't allow you to give 100% to the practice. but especially it means doubt about whether there is such a thing as enlightenment or liberation or the ability to transcend self-consciousness. So specifically these kind of doubts and whether the Buddha was fully enlightened. But when you practice and the Buddha's teachings and you come to that point of experiencing that glimpse of liberation, then you're fully convinced that the Buddha was definitely an enlightened being, and so on. So you acquire extreme faith in the teaching. So that's one of the hallmarks of a Sotapanna, is having the unshakable faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and faith, especially in the practice, and the faith that, every person, or even me myself, can eventually reach that state of liberation. So those three fetters are sort of what are called destroyed or overcome in that experience of entering the stream. And we gave a simile of entering the stream before. I'll just repeat it because it's an interesting little simile. With the 8 insight knowledges. So a person's practicing those 8 insight knowledges and then comes to the knowledge of equanimity, and then followed by conformity and change of lineage, and then the path knowledge. So I'm just going to give it a simile of that. So a person, let's say, is running on this bank and there's a river. He wants to cross from this bank of the river where there's a lot of trials and tribulations and dangers, and get to the other side of the river that he sees is very peaceful. So there's a tree with a rope or a vine hanging down from the tree branch down near the above the surface of the water. So this person runs, gets back about 100 feet and runs very fast, and then leaves the bank of the river and grabs that vine and swings out, if you can visualize this, swings out, across the middle of the river, and then comes over where his feet have reached above the other side, the other shore. And then the person lets go of the rope or vine and falls down and lands with his feet on the other bank. Because of the speed and everything, he might kind of be a little bit wobbly at first. So he might take a few steps to gain the balance and realize, wow, I'm over here on the other side and experiencing this peace of the other side, the freedom from dangers. So that's a simile of these knowledges of conformity and change of lineage. That when the person runs, because first of all, he has to see the other side as being peaceful. If he doesn't see the other side as peaceful, he's not going to go there. So he runs, and the moment his feet leaves this bank, that is already the change of lineage. And as the hands grab the rope and swing out, that's the conformity knowledge. That means the mind is conforming to the truth. As his feet leave that bank, and as he grabs the rope and swings out across the river, and as he's getting toward the other side, that is the change of lineage. His mind now is at a state he can't return to the other side. And that momentum is the change of lineage, which his mind is leaving the conditioned state and entering into the non-dual or the unconditioned state. And then he lets go of the rope, and the feet landing on the shore is called path knowledge. His feet land on the path. That means the other shore. And then it takes a few minutes or so for the person to kind of, steady his feet and then kind of get used to, wow, this other bank. and then can actually start enjoying the fruits, take a little walk and pick some fruits and enjoy the cool breeze on the other side of the freedom. So that's called the path knowledge and the fruition knowledge. The path knowledge is when the mind has, it destroys those three fetters. And then the fruition knowledge is the actual enjoying the experience, because once he steadies himself and then, looks around and realizes, my gosh, I'm finally here, and then he's able to then walk freely without having to look around or somebody's chasing him to catch him. And so he walks free with that freedom of, the freedom is the freedom of those three fetters. That's basically the freedom of the burden of the mind, of, the strong attachment to I, me, and mine, and also doubts. It's our doubts that hold us back, But when the doubts are overcome, then you gain a lot of energy to want to continue to practice. So anyway, that's the entering the stream. Now, it is said that experience of entering the stream, destroying those three fetters, reduces so much of your past karma that it wipes out, well, there's no exact percentage, but I like to say it kind of wipes out at least 80% of your past karma in a way, and I'm going to explain that. Because if we don't attain, and it is said that a person, if they're very negligent, they would have to be reborn at the most 7 times in order to purify the rest of those remaining 7 fetters. So he destroyed 3 fetters. And at the most, you would be reborn. That's if they're very negligent. They would have to be reborn at the most 7 times before attaining the full liberation. Now, many people can attain it in that go through the next 3 stages in even the same life, or even in the same week. I mean, if they have the right accumulated, the matured spiritual faculties and so on. So, but if a person, if we die and without attaining the stream entry, then it's possible our mind would continue to go through the cycles of samsara for hundreds of thousands or so many more lives. So the fact that you attain stream entry, going from infinite future lives down to the maximum of 7, that's what I meant by it kind of destroys, 80% or more of the kind of karma that would have held, kept your mind indefinitely in samsara. That's why attaining stream entry is considered to be, the really, at least the goal. If that's as much as you can reach in this lifetime, you would have done good by the Dhamma. You would have, really succeeded in gaining that path. So that means you're standing on the path, the Eightfold Path. That's why it's called path knowledge. And you review that, and you experience that freedom of the mind. But then, you still have the next 3 stages to go. So a Sotapanna would be highly motivated because of that freedom of destroying 3 fetters. They think, well, if I overcome more fetters, it's so much the better, right? So it gives them a lot of energy. Now, the next stage is a stage of once returning. Now, the practice is the same. The practice of meditation and so on is the same. You just keep repeating and developing the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 7 factors of enlightenment, and going over those insight knowledges again and again, and it gets easier and easier until you have that experience again. And that weakens. The next 2 fetters are sense desire and ill will. So as we all know, that basically that means the greed and hatred. So greed, hatred, and delusion are those three main, the roots of all defilements. But sense desire and aversion are the strong ones, being caught in that web of push and pull between pleasurable feeling and painful feeling that we've talked about quite often. So when one attains the what is called once returning, so in the second stage of once returning, it's called once returning because you weaken sense desire and ill will. Because being born here on the earth and so on is said to be because of sense desire and ill will or greed and hatred. So one is said attenuates greed and hatred, doesn't overcome it fully, but let's say 90% reduces greed and hatred. So it would really take a lot of something really pushing your buttons to arouse any sensual desire, whether it's sexual desire or just other sensual desires, but primarily the sexual desire. But it could be in any other sense desires too. And also it reduces the ill will. Somebody would really have to push your buttons to kind of really get you angry or so on. So it's that much of the unconscious mind has been purified. So, even a once returner still has, residual, has a little bit of greed or hatred in it. And they've also weakened more of the sense of self. And so the hallmark of the once returner is that they would have only enough karma left to come back as a human being one more time in order to work out these last fetters. And they reach the path of once returning and the path of never returning. So the path moment, you undergo that change of lineage and again, but this time you're changing the lineage from a Sothapat to the lineage of a once returner, where that greed and aversion, greed or hatred, is greatly reduced. So usually it would just come up like in dreams, perhaps, or very strong situations that would trigger off any of that. So, but because of that, in the 5 higher fetters, that I'm going to mention briefly or shortly, is enough to come back one more time again, to be reborn one more time. That's why it is called once returning, or it's called Sakkadagami, the Pali term. Okay. So now there are still these 7 fetters left, including greed or hatred, but very, in very weak levels. So it takes 2 stages to completely destroy greed or hatred, because that shows you how strong attachment and aversion, greed and hatred, sensual desire, ill will, such strong fetters. So the 3rd stage is called the never returning. And this is where, again, by continuing your meditation practice, you get this powerful insight and path knowledge again. And the last traces of sense desire and ill will are totally overcome. And that's why it's called never returning. The mind would not return again to be born in any of the realms of the senses, because you've totally overcome and eliminated any desire or aversion for any of the sense objects, any sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, or physical things. You would have totally overcome any type of sexual desire also. That's what the stage of never returning. That means the mind could still be reborn in some very rarefied Brahma lokas where one would attain enlightenment there, but that's hard for people to sort of, imagine. But basically, one probably would quite easily even go on to attain the full enlightenment, even in that same life. But in other sutras, you often read that, at the end of Dhamma practice, the Buddha said, and if you practice this way for 7 days, like with the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha says, if one is able to practice the 7 factors of enlightenment and the 4 foundations of mindfulness for just 7 days, one could attain either full enlightenment, or if a little bit of residue of defilement remain, the state of a non-returner. So that was the Buddha was saying. So, but anyway, so in the never returning stage, the sense, desire, and ill will are totally overcome. Now, what remains are what are called the 5 lower fetters, and they're lower because they're deeper in the unconscious mind. And so that means a subtle, what is called rupa and arupa. That means desire for the very fine form and formless kind of sensations. And basically, this also means being reborn in the realms of Brahma and being reborn as a deva, or in these Brahma, the Rupa Jhana realms, the realm Brahma lokas especially. So people might still have desire for that. Or even in meditation, you still have desire for these subtle, pleasant vibrations that you get in meditation. So that, like the extreme bliss that comes in meditation, or maybe you're seeing some bright light in the mind and you're attached to that, and so on. Or desiring to be reborn in the Brahma realms. So if you attain jhana and die in jhana, you can be reborn in these Brahma realms. So that's also considered a fetter, actually, to get too attached to the stage of jhana, and you die in that, and then the mind, instead of attaining enlightenment, it might be reborn in these non-returner levels, or these Brahma lokas. So anyway, so the last stage is the stage of what's called the Arahant, or the full liberation. And these 5 lower fetters, again, attachment to the experiences of meditation. Basically, it's that attachment to visions you might have, or these extreme blissful feelings, or any other things that attract the mind, but they're not of the material world. And then the last 3 fetters are subtle restlessness, because you still have this kind of subtle, very subtle desires. That's considered subtle restlessness. One is still not totally 100% content. So the subtle restlessness. And then the mana, still the ego. There's still subtle traces of the I left, but they're very, very subtle. But there would be enough to keep the mind in samsara, in that non-returners, these pure abodes of the non-returner. So overcoming that last thread, the last silver thread, you might say, to use that expression, of the ego, which comes also from the attachment to these subtle experiences of meditation. And then the last one is ignorance. Because of that subtle remnant of the I consciousness, that is still considered to be the ignorance. So that is overcome. So those are called the lower fetters, attachment to these very subtle, non-material mental experiences. And then the restlessness and pride and conceit. One could think, well, compare oneself with other meditators. Well, I think I've reached a higher state than that person. Or maybe a little bit of pride, I'm a Sotapanna. But, they know it's an illusion because they've already destroyed the belief in a self long ago. But these habits, this sense of I is so deeply rooted that it's not easy to overcome and to get up. So, it takes a lot of practice to gradually wean the mind of those last remnants of the ego. So the same conformity and path knowledge, the path of the Arahantship, is when one realizes that the last of those fetters have been destroyed and the mind is fully liberated. And the Buddha mentioned this in so many other suttas. He says that when a person reaches that path of arahantship, they know it, and it's clearly as know it. If you looked in a mirror and you saw some smudges on your face or any other little things, you would know. But if you look in a mirror and you say the face is completely pure, clean, you would know that too. So in all these stages, one reviews the kind of defilements that are still there and then acknowledges that, the mind is free from these defilements. So that rebirth is destroyed. That's the Arahant. He definitely knows, rebirth is destroyed, done with what had to be done, which is the practice of Dhamma, and the mind has attained liberation. In fact, these were the first words of the Buddha when he attained full enlightenment. He said, "O house builder, thou art seen. I've wandered in samsara for so many lifetimes, finding but not seeking the builder of this karmic house." That means the mind, ego mind. "O house builder, thou art seen. Thy rafters are broken, thy ridgepole is shattered. This mind has attained the unconditioned, achieved is the end of craving and suffering." And that means also the end of the rounds of the rebirth. So this is a direct knowledge and understanding when a person attains that level. It's so powerful. So as he's broke the last chains of those 10 fetters. And those are the 4 stages of what is called the purification by knowledge and vision. Each of those stages purifies those particular fetters that are connected with each of those stages. So one can see that, at the point where a person attains that first stage of the Sotapanna, and again, a Sotapanna can still have, attachment and aversion and desires and aversions and so on, but it wouldn't be strong enough for that person to break any of the major precepts that would cause them to be reborn in a lower realm, such as being reborn in the animal world or in the realms of the hungry spirits, the ghosts, or in the hells. So that's also a hallmark of the Sotapanna, that their mind has reached a level of purity in which it would not be attracted or be reborn in any of those so-called lower realms, where one gets born by breaking the major precepts, especially killing and having wrong views and some of the other, precepts that are motivated by that, greed and hatred. So that is the purification by knowledge and vision. It means each of those stages purifies more and more of the fetters until the mind reaches the state of liberation. And just to give this analogy again that I've given before, because it's hard for people to really kind of wrap their head around it, especially if they have not much experience. But it all revolves around the sense of the self. Now, the Sotapanna has destroyed the belief in a self, but the feeling of I keeps on hanging around in the unconscious and, motivating a lot of his or her actions. But again, none of those actions would involve breaking some of the major precepts, like killing a mother or father, wounding a Buddha, creating a schism in the order, killing an Arahant, and so on. So they wouldn't do these kind of actions. And there's other, debates on whether they would even break any of the, even of the other precepts. But, there's some, different opinions about that. So anyway, those, those fetters are the main thing. So it's a sense of self. So there's an analogy. Each of these four stages also weakens the sense of self more and more and more and more and more, until one reaches the state of Arahant, where even the remnant of an I in the mind is become totally sort of transcendent. And I give the simile of having an ice cube floating in water. Let's say you have an ice cube floating in water. And let's say the water represents the pure mind or the pure awareness, the pure present moment awareness, the transcendent awareness, or the nibbana element. The ice cube, now an ice cube is also made up of water, isn't it? But it thinks it's separate from the water. The ego thinks it is separate from things around it. And that's what we call dualistic consciousness. Thinking that this body and this mind is separate from everything else. So with each of those stages of the four stages of liberation, even the Sotapanna, that ice would melt a little bit. That ice cube would melt a little bit. And then with each of those successive stages, the ice cube would melt further and further, because the analogy of wisdom, the development of wisdom, mindfulness and wisdom is considered to be like, a fire, the fire of wisdom that burns up the defilements. So this fire of wisdom, the knowledge that we're cultivating through those insight knowledges and through the general various insights that you're getting, is causing that ice cube of the sense of self to melt more and more. And then with the each of those last three stages, the once returning, never returning, and then the final stage, the Arahant, was when the last bit of that ice cube melts away and there's no more trace of any ice cube. So what happened to the ice cube? Can you say it vanished? No, but you can't catch it anymore. You can't bring those water molecules back to create that ice cube again. So it's sort of become the water. That means the individual awareness has melted into this ocean of non-duality, which of course is very difficult to explain in words. That's why it's beyond words, really. But anyway, this analogy of the ice cube could give you a certain idea of that. And you can experience that in meditation. As you are meditating, if you go into a deep state of mindfulness and wisdom and awareness and letting go, as we mentioned, through these insight knowledges or through even attaining the higher stages of jhana, each of those is like melting that ice cube more and more, and till it, totally vanishes. And it doesn't have any more power to be reborn anywhere. That's why it attains, it's called the deathless state. The state that was never born and never dies. And that's why it actually, an Arahant sort of dies before the physical body dies. The dualistic mind dies. The greed, hatred, and delusion in the mind had died, or they died to the self. And so that's the real liberation. But so even an Arahant or enlightened person, they've already attained Nibbana, but it's called Nibbana with the 5 aggregates still remaining. So they still have a body, and they still can, perceive the world, but there's no greed, hatred, or delusion in their mind, and they're not creating any karma. But they live out their lifespan until it naturally, they wouldn't take their own life normally, and they would just live out the lifespan with, probably just teaching the Dhamma and being an inspiration for others, but without accumulating more karma. So that's what I wanted to finish in this talk about the 7 purifications, and especially this last one, because it's not really talked about or explained too much in a lot of other places, although the Buddha does talk about it quite extensively in the suttas, but in the general popular teachings, they're not always explained methodically. I mean, this is a very methodical, this is the Buddha's teaching. And when you see how, sort of intimate and exact, all these things are interconnected, and the depth of understanding of the mind, that's why you're convinced. I mean, this person is a Buddha, a Buddha, one who's awake, right? can come up with this kind of mental psychology and high-tech psychology that we can actually purify the mind of its, deepest defilements. So friends, I'm going to close here with this talk. And so next week we'll be contemplating some other sutras and topics. But I want to open up and see if there's any questions that might have accrued from any of this talk. Seems to be some chats here. Let me look at these. May I ask a question at some point? Okay, these are just some, not really questions. Okay, first question. Do you have any doubt that Sothapat can still be achieved? If not, what is the best method for doing so? I'm new here, so I'm not as familiar with your teachings. I have no doubt that Sothapat can still, the state of a Sotapanna can still be achieved. And the Buddha has said, wherever there's the Eightfold Path and wherever there's somebody sincerely practicing the Eightfold Path, there you will find these 4 types of persons, or the 8 types of individuals. That means the one who's on the path and enjoying the fruit of each of those 4 stages. And so anyway, if not, but I don't have any doubts that it can be achieved. Although there are some beliefs in some Asian countries that when I first went to Sri Lanka, I actually heard people saying, oh, there's too much sin in the world and the world is so corrupt and it's impossible for anybody to attain even stream entry in this life. And I thought that was quite odd, actually, because, I had read quite a lot of the suttas and so on and so on. So to me, that's a defeatist attitude. Now, it's true that, a lot of people are not going to attain the Sotapanna stage maybe in this life, even though they try to practice as well as they can. They still may not reach that level, but it doesn't mean it's impossible, because, there are people who have attained those levels. And the best method for doing so, well, according to the Theravada tradition, it's developing the means of destroying these 10 fetters, and the development of mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom that allows one to destroy those fetters. And, from our point of view, there's no other way. Now, other, even branches of the Buddhism might, offer their own methods, but, that's their practice and so on, and they may be quite valid too. But this is particularly the method espoused within the Pali Suttas, which is considered the Theravada tradition, coming from the Pali Sutras, which explain all these levels of Dhamma practice. So anyway, if you're new to these teachings, I would highly recommend you go back and listen to some of these Dhamma talks that I've been giving in the last year and a half. Or read the suttas, if you can get the Pali Sutras, especially the Bhikkhu Bodhi translations in English. They'll give you a good familiarity with these teachings. Okay, the second question is, what is the relationship between Jhana, Attainment, and Sothapat? Well, we've discussed this previously, and there's a kind of sometimes a misconception of what jhana is. There's two types of jhana. There's called apana jhana and vipassana jhana. And in the jhana, you overcome those 5 hindrances, so temporarily overcome the 5 hindrances that come from the fetters. Actually, the fetters are like the roots of a tree underneath, and the hindrances are like brief little flowers or other things that appear on the branches of the trees. But they just arise and they fall off, like leaves arise and then they fall off. But anyway, so the 5 fetters are just things that are coming up from the unconscious mind moment by moment. So you suppress those. You can suppress them by one-pointed concentration and attaining what is called the apana jhana, or you can attain them through the development of the 7 factors of enlightenment, leading up to that equanimity of formations, and attain what is called vipassana jhana. The hallmark of jhana, any jhana, whether it's vipassana jhana or apana jhana, is these jhana factors of applied and sustained attention, piti, sukha, and one-pointedness, rapture and happiness and one-pointedness. So however you weaken and temporarily overcome those 5 hindrances, that is the hallmark of the first jhana. And again, you can attain that by practicing some of the traditional one-pointed concentration techniques, such as the anapanasati, the breathing, mindfulness of breathing, or you practice basically, it's the 4 foundations of mindfulness and cultivating the Dhammanupassana, the perceptions of impermanence, the suffering and no self, as I've explained many times over. So that is the difference. There's the jhana, there's a lot of people don't talk about the vipassana jhana, but it's necessary to attain the jhana to attain Sotapanna, at least the first jhana, but you can attain it at the time of attaining the Sotapanna. And through the development of the 7 factors of enlightenment, leading up to that equanimity of formations. So one can attain these 4 stages of liberation through any of the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, and fourth jhana. I like to say that one could attain, if you can only attain the first jhana, vipassana jhana, then the first level of the jhana, you could attain the sotapanna with that. If you're able to attain the second jhana, in the second vipassana jhana, then you might be able to reach the once eternal. And if you can have developed the third jhana and attain the vipassana jhana with that third level jhana, then you could attain once, never returning. And if you have the fourth jhana, develop that state of purified equanimity and mindfulness, but maintain that through the through the insight method, in attaining the fourth vipassana jhana, one could attain arahantship. I mean, that's just a way that I intellectually kind of try to explain that and make those connections. Whether it's absolutely that way or not, that's up to debate, and other people will probably debate that and say I'm wrong or something else. But anyway, this is up to each person's experience. So anyway, many people today have minds that are frenzied, weighed down by problems, afraid, isolated, mistreated, and so on. When the mind is when the mind is consumed by all those states, should one abandon formal practice? I would say don't abandon it, but you might practice, like practicing yoga exercise. Check up in your life and see what is contributing to these mental states, and then you try to change some of that stuff in your life. And the way you change it is by the practice of meditation. So it's kind of a catch-22. You can't weaken those states without practicing meditation, and you can't achieve deeper levels without weakening those states. So that's why you have to, apply, like, in the Sabhasava Sutta, you have to apply those 7 methods of weakening those fetters or those defilements in our daily life, like following precepts and avoiding unseemly places that excite the senses, or practicing the Brahma Viharas. You could practice with Brahma Viharas and try to practice those until the mind calms down. So that's a possibility also. But yes, those states is a result of the lack of wisdom, but that lack of wisdom comes from the lack of practice that prevents you from reaching these deeper levels of tranquility. Okay. Fetters, hindrances, defilements, desires, impulses. Are these correct translations? They're good enough. They're good enough. What are the differences? I mean, they're connected. They have their, they're all connected. They're all connected. So, I'd say you figure it out. You have intelligence. So, I've already explained that the fetters are like the underground roots of a tree. The hindrances are like the things that come up in the ground, temporarily. The kleshas are the same really as the fetters, they're all connected. So anyway, it's already getting a little bit late and we want to finish up. Even these other questions, I think I've already covered these questions about the jhanas, vipassana jhanas and so on. Okay, so friends, this wraps up this talk on but again, you can it takes a lot and a lot of study, even to listen to these talks or read the sutras that talk about these things hundreds of times before gradually it kind of, sinks in. And then especially as you're, that helps to overcome the doubts and to get the motivation to want to practice more. But again, whether everyone reaches those levels or not in this life, that's left to be seen. But if we don't give it the benefit of the doubt, then we get defeated. A lot of people self-defeat them by thinking, oh, I'll never be able to give up these things. Well, people do, So, before I became a monk, before I was, when I was only, 20, 21, if you asked if I was ever going to, become a monk and practice meditation, all this stuff, I probably would have said, what is that? I know nothing about it. So, but you never know. So things happen. Okay, friends, let's go ahead and take a short few minutes to use the restroom. Then we'll come back. We'll do a few yoga stretches and have our meditation. Okay? See you back in a few minutes. As to stand straight, relax your arms at the sides. Just gently close your eyes, feel your feet pressing the floor. Try to mentally feel the outline of the standing body, and then begin some deep, slow breathing, taking 3 seconds to expand your abdomen, rib cage, and upper chest. Hold the air in the lungs, 2 or 3 seconds. And slowly breathe out. Feel the last bit of air go out of the lungs. And then the next in-breath. Just take a few more deep, slow breaths like that, bringing the mind into the body, centered in the body. It's cultivating this mindfulness. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Now you can, we're going to go through these exercises, coordinating it with the breathing. You can open the eyes to observe me as I lead you through it. So on the in breath, raise the arms over the head, interlock the fingers above the head, turn the palms up, straighten your arms and stretch the head back and stretch upwards at the same time. Feel the sensations on the out breath touch the top of the head. And 2 more times. In breath, palms up, straighten the arms. Stretch the head back, bend back a little more. Out breath, touch the top of the head. And 3rd time, hold that upward stretch longer. Bend back a little more. Feel the sensation. Now release the fingers, the out breath, arms back to the sides. Just relax. Just keep the mind focused in the body. Try to feel the increased body sensation. And the clothing touching the skin. Increased tingling sensations in your hands and fingers. I'm having stretched the fingers. And just mentally remember standing, standing, standing. Present moment of the body. Just letting go of your thoughts. Just let the thoughts come and go in the back of the mind. Keep the breathing body and sensations in the front of the awareness. Okay, now on the next in-breath, push up on the toes, raise the arms over the head in this way, facing the hands toward each other, and stretch up. In the out-breath, come back down, arms to the side, heels to the floor. Use the breath to help lift the body up, in breath. Stretch. Out. In. Out. Relax. Just keep feeling the body, the increased sensation. Try to feel the eyes and the sockets, the point behind the eyes, feeling that outline of the standing body with all different sensations, pulsation, heart beating, breathing. Now we're going to do the backward and forward bending. So turn the palms outward. On an in-breath, gradually raise the arms up and gradually spread them out to the sides till their arms come out to the horizontal position as you bend back. Look up at the ceiling. In-breath, carefully lift up, keep the arms out at the sides. And on the out-breath, lower the arms and hands down towards the floor. And keep your legs straight so you can touch the floor. Let the little bones in the lower spine stretch out. And begin standing up. Turn the palms outward again. Spread the arms out to the horizontal, bend back. In breath, lift up. Out breath, lower the arms down. In breath up. Third time, the back bend. In breath, out breath. So hold that downward stretch longer. And keep the legs straight. Feel the stretch in the leg muscles. Let those little bones at the base of the spine stretch out. And then begin standing up. This time bring the hands together at your chest. The out-breath, hands back to the sides. Feel the whole body vibrating, pulsating. That activated life force awareness. Oxygenated blood. Charging up all the cells and tissues. The body, mind, nervous system. Okay, so try to mindfully come back and get it to your meditation seat. straight. To align the back and head in a straight line. Just gently close your eyes, take a few deep, slow breaths. Just rest the attention behind the eyes. Do some deep, slow breathing. Recenter the attention in the body, sitting body. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Try to feel that outline of the body. Take a few more deep, slow breaths. Now on the next out breath, just continue the deep breathing. Just let the breath return to its shorter, uncontrolled rhythm. Still keep the attention focused in the center of the body to feel the subtler movements of expanding and contracting. Or if you like, you can feel the air as it enters the nostrils and then feel the expanding of the chest. And then the out breath, however it helps you to concentrate on the breathing. We're going to count the breaths from 1 to 10 to try to develop a better concentration. So with the next expanding in breath, mentally count to 1. With the contracting out breath, also 1. The next in breath, 2. Out breath, 2. In breath, 3. Out breath, 3. In breath, 4. Out breath, 4. In 5. Out 5. In 6. Out 6. In 7. Out 7. In 8. out 8, in 9, out 9, in 10, out 10. Now discontinue the counting. Just keep the attention focused on the movements of the expanding and contracting abdomen, rib cage, or chest. Try to feel the subtle sensations of the clothing rubbing against the skin of the stomach, rib cage, or chest. As it expands and contracts there in the center of the body. Try to make that your primary focus of continued concentration, mindfulness and concentration. Just have the feeling of being a scientist sitting in the laboratory. This body is the laboratory for the meditator, looking down the microscope of concentrated awareness to the center of the body to feel those subtle expanding, contracting sensations. And just know when the breath is coming in and know when the breath is going out. You know it by feeling it. Feeling those tactile sensations. Of the breathing process. Keep turning up the power of the mental microscope. Try to notice the 4 phases of each breath. The expanding in-breath and the brief pause. Contracting out-breath and the brief pause. Just following that over and over and over and over again. You can make these brief mental remindings to help remember. In sitting. Out, sitting. An ongoing, continuous connection to the present moment awareness. In sitting. Out, sitting. It's the applied and sustained attention. And try to cultivate that first insight knowledge of arising and vanishing with the breathing. Just feel how the in-breath begins, last 1 or 2 seconds, and stops. And the out breath begins, last 1 or 2 seconds, and stop. Even in one in-breath, you might notice several subtler sensations of expanding and contracting. Keep turning up the power of the mental microscope. Just letting the thoughts come and go in the back of the mind. Keeping that focus of the breathing in the front of the awareness. Feeling, seeing how each breath is different. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. Sometimes you feel it more in the abdomen, sometimes you feel it more in the rib cage, upper chest. It's always changing. Also the pauses between the breaths are sometimes longer or shorter. It's part of the mindfulness of breathing, noticing how the breath is always changing, impermanent, changing moment by moment. Sensations coming and going. Even while noticing the sensations of breathing coming and going, arising and vanishing. Other sensations can be noticed in the background, maybe a heartbeat or pulse of blood or prickling sensation. The touch of clothing against the skin, all these other sensations kind of there in the background. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Feeling the breathing, the body in the body. Means the breathing within the larger sitting body. And gradually opening up to the flow of impermanence. Where the breath is always there in the center, but all around it you can notice other sensations in different places of the body coming and going by themselves, producing different perceptions. Mind may be recognizing, well, that's my arm or my foot or my ear. Those are perceptions. See if you can identify the 5 aggregates in the material vibration, pleasant or painful sensations. Those vibrations have the perceptions, that means the memories, names or labels, calling it this or that kind of object. Any reactions or thoughts about it. Let's try to cultivate a detached, observing awareness, just like a scientist would look down the microscope and say, this is a red blood cell, this is a white blood cell, this is other things. We see in this body, there's the breathing going on, there's different sensations coming and going, material vibrations, pleasant and painful sensations, there's perceptions, mental activity. Or even noticing thoughts of I, me, or mine. Those are also just mental thought bubbles that float through the awareness. This is the process of the insight awareness, investigation of Dhamma. These 5 aggregates are not me, not mine, not myself. They're just powered by the past conditioning, thoughts, ignorance. Held by those fetters. Stay alert, awake, breath by breath, moment by moment. Mind wanders away, take a couple of deep, slow breaths to reground the attention in the body. Try to notice more and subtler details, sensations. Those 5 aggregates coming and going, arising and vanishing, moment by moment. Be alert for the subtle urges arising in the mind, urge to move, urge to think. Be alert for any subtle tension in the body or the mind. These out breaths, relaxing more and more, relaxing the body, relaxing the mind into the present moment. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Sensations come and go. Pleasure or pain come and go. Sounds come and go. Perception, thoughts come and go. Thought or idea of I, me, or mine come and go. These are all just the continuous arising and vanishing, flux of impermanence, those 5 groups of grasping. five aggregates. Just beneath all of that change or physical pain or mental chaos, or confusion, it's the parallel dimension of the now, present moment awareness. It's basically just the mental space of present moment awareness through which all of those five aggregates just arise, last a moment or two, vanish. That seeing, understanding with the eye of insight, the eye of wisdom. You can maintain that kind of awareness without any hindrances. It's equal to the first jhana or vipassana jhana. Just be aware of that remnant of I, me, or mine. It's kind of hanging around in the back of the mind. Letting go of that. You let go of the knower starts to melt away. The nice cube of the I starts to melt away. There's just the tranquil awareness of sensations, stimulations, arising and vanishing through that space of awareness. Even the hard edges of the body may kind of melt away. The defined outline of the body may disappear. What perceptions or thoughts arise based on that sound contact, sound vibration? Sabbe sankhara anicchati yada panyaya pasati atane bindati dukhi esamago visuddhiya dukkha patta ca nidukkha bhaya patta ca nibbaya sokha patta ca nisoka ontu sabbe pipanino. All conditioned things, the five aggregates of this body, mind, and world are impermanent. Once one sees this with the eye of wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity, to freedom. And may the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear-struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. In this way, may all beings live with mindfulness and wisdom. And thus spoke the Buddha. And now to finish the meditation, I invite you to join in chanting the word sadhu 3 times. Slowly, we do the chanting on a long out breath. Breathe in. Sadhu. 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 And place the hands at the edge of the knees. Take one more deep breath. Stretch the head back, pull the hands against the knees to arch the spine backward. And lift the head up on an in-breath, and on the out-breath, press the chin to the top of the chest to stretch the neck vertebrae. And lift the chin up level on an in-breath. Relax on the out-breath. Put a smile on your face. Okay, friends. So thank you for tuning in this evening and finishing up this last section on the stages of purification. And Again, this is something that's very deep and takes many, many times reviewing it and meditating on it, cultivating those 4 foundations of mindfulness, little by little, those wisdom insights into that, the nature of anicca, dukkha, anatta arise. Okay, friends, haven't decided yet exactly what the topic next week will be, but I'll send out that next mailing about it by probably Monday. We may be going over the Ratana Sutta, and I'll try to send out an attachment to that if I get one. Okay? So again, mindfulness a day keeps dukkha away, and Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Good night.
You're all welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.